All right. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into the psychology of silence. That phenomenon pretty much all of us have bumped into at some point. We're looking at the profound psychological meaning behind why certain individuals just completely shut down during a conflict. If you've ever been on the receiving end of the silent treatment, or hey, maybe you're the one who tends to withdraw when things get tough, this explainer is going to totally change how you view those tense moments. Because it's not just some random personality quirk, there's a really fascinating psychological mechanism at play here. So let's jump right into our first section, silence when they're hurt. Seriously, have you ever noticed how some people go completely silent when they get hurt? It's super relatable, and let's be real, often incredibly frustrating. You're in the middle of this tense discussion, emotions are running hot, and suddenly, the other person just stops. They hit a brick wall. Picture a recent disagreement you had with a partner, maybe a close friend or a family member. You're gearing up for a back and forth, right? You expect them to defend themselves or at least express their own frustration. But instead, they just retreat inward. It's like they lock the doors and pull down the shades. It's jarring because it totally breaks the normal rhythm of how we communicate as humans.
Okay, let's really dive into this. When this shutdown happens, you're going to immediately notice two distinct absences. First, there are no arguments. You get absolutely zero pushback from their side. And second, no explanations. They aren't telling you why they're upset or what on earth is going on in their head. What you're experiencing is this sudden, massive vacuum of communication. And it's crucial to recognize here, this isn't just a brief pause to collect their thoughts. No, it is a complete and total stop to the conversational exchange.
Just silence. It's incredibly heavy, isn't it? It feels like this stark, absolute wall. When an expected action, like speaking up when you feel hurt, is replaced by absolute nothingness, well, that nothingness itself becomes a massive statement. But what is that statement actually saying?
Well, that brings us to section 2, the myth, a lack of caring. It's so easy to assume they just don't care. When you're faced with that impenetrable wall of silence, human nature just kicks in. It's actually a defensive reflex on our part to protect our own feelings. And honestly, it's completely understandable why our brains naturally go there. I mean, when someone won't engage with your pain or the conflict right in front of you, it feels like pure indifference. It feels cold. It feels dismissive. If you've been on the receiving end of this, you know firsthand how deeply frustrating and isolating it is. You're probably sitting there thinking, if you actually cared about me, or if you cared about fixing this, you'd say something. But according to the psychological research we're unpacking today, this natural assumption, it's actually a complete misconception.
Which leads us right to the reality of the situation in Section 3. The truth. It's a learned response. Now, what's really interesting here is how we shift from that immediate sting of feeling rejected by their silence toward a place of genuine psychological empathy. Notice the stark contrast. On the one hand, we have the societal myth, our common assumption, they don't care. But look at the flip side. The actual psychology tells us this is a learned emotional response. It's not a void of feeling. It's a highly active, albeit internalized psychological reaction. Seeing these two ideas weighed against each other really hits the nail on the head, showing just how completely wrong our initial instincts can be during the heat of an argument.
So, the crucial point here is that a learned emotional response is a deep psychological reaction rather than a lack of emotion. Let's really break that down together. Somewhere along the way, maybe as a kid where speaking their mind resulted in punishment, or maybe expressing hurt just led to more pain, this person learned that speaking up was straight up unsafe. Over time, their brain literally wired itself to use silence as a protective shield. Psychology reveals that this silence is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. They aren't devoid of feeling. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they might be entirely overwhelmed by their feelings. Shutting down the communication pathways is literally the only way their nervous system knows how to cope with the overload. Let's move along and see how this builds into Section 4, the hidden psychology.
So why do some people shut down instead of talking? And what does their silence actually mean in practice? Now that we've established this is a deeply rooted protective mechanism and not just someone giving you the cold shoulder, we have to look at what's actually happening beneath the surface. If they aren't using words, what is their silence actively communicating to us? Diving into this hidden psychology is absolutely key to finally interpreting what that silence signifies. In practice, their silence means their emotional capacity has totally maxed out. It means they are retreating to psychological safety. Understanding this transforms a moment of intense, blinding frustration into a moment of critical understanding. Because instead of demanding they speak, recognizing this learned response allows you to give them the space they subconsciously need to self-regulate and just feel safe again.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final takeaway for today. These patterns are often misunderstood, even by the people experiencing them. I want to leave you with that highly provocative thought. The person freezing up and going silent right in front of you, they might not even fully understand why they can't speak in that moment. They just know they can't. It really makes you wonder, right? How well do any of us truly understand our own ingrained emotional patterns? The next time you encounter that frustrating wall of silence, I challenge you to look past the quiet, remember the underlying psychology we explored in this explainer today, and ask yourself, what deeply ingrained protective response might you actually be witnessing? Thanks for joining me. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.